discussing my research on the correlation between cultural gender standards and the lack of Asian women working in the business field. So to set the stage of my presentation, I wanted to share with you an eye-opening statistic. According to the United Nations, it will take approximately 286 years to reach global gender equality. This puts the world way off its target outlined in the Sustainable Development Goals to have this equality reached by the year 2030. So gender diversity is a term used to describe companies that have an equitable and fair representation of both genders in their workforces. And according to a study done by Forbes, 60.2% of gender diverse companies have reported increased profit and productivity, 56.8% report increased ability to attract and retain talent, and 54.4% report greater creativity, innovation, and openness. A study done by the Harvard Business Review has found direct positive correlations between women in C-suite positions and the increased productivity, profitability, and overall employee morale of their employees. So you may be wondering, what are the direct positive effects of having a female CEO? Well, there's two main categories that this can fall under. The first is increased morality or employee satisfaction, and when employees are happy at their jobs, they're more likely to stay there for longer periods of time, which leads to greater job retention. And this is also occurs because female CEOs are more likely to give their employees benefits such as healthcare and other things like that. And this is really important in today's society where younger generations are known for job hopping and are less likely to stay at one job for a longer period of time. So by having female CEOs and creating that increased morality and job retention, it eliminates the need for constant turnover within a company. And then the second thing that falls into this category is sustainability, because female CEOs have been proven to be more socially conscious in their business practices. They're more likely to implement environmentally friendly practices and investments. The second category would be economic prosperity, because female CEOs have been proven to have greater productivity and profitability within their companies. And this is especially important because when companies are prospering, the economy is prospering. So these are the direct positive effects of having female CEOs. The statistic that I shared with you earlier about how it will take 286 years to reach global gender equality can be broken down by region. So in North America, it is estimated to take about 61.8 years to reach this equality, but in Asia, this number is almost 3 times that at 173.8 years. So this disparity is one of the main focuses of my research. I'm going to share with you some quick statistics. So in the Asia Pacific region, only about 4% of companies have females in their CEO positions. So this is any company that is headquartered out of or was once based out of the Asia Pacific region. And the gender pay gap here is 20%, so where a man would make $1, a woman would make only 80 cents. And then in South Asia, only about 4.7% of companies have female CEOs, but the gender pay gap here is even greater at 33%, so where a man would make $1, a woman would make only about 66 cents. And I'm going to zoom in on some other specific facts. So in India, only about 100 of the 2,000 companies listed on the Indian Stock Exchange have females in CEO or MD positions. And India ranks 121 out of 130 countries in terms of female labor participation, and the economic contribution of women in this country is less than half the global average. In China, as China has over the years become a more economic global power, it has actually become harder and more disadvantageous for women to join the workforce, which is a stark contrast to other countries like the United States and countries in the European Union, where as their economies have grown, they have done more progress towards making gender equality and closing the gender pay gap. So I want to share with you some information about how gender discrimination in Asia has led to women kind of being considered second-class citizens. So women, their mobility, their career paths, their education, their mobility, their social standing, it's all impacted and dictated by the men of these patriarchal societies. In East Asia, there is actually this common saying that roughly translates to, girls are born to be fed throughout their lives and boys are born to earn and support their families. And this just kind of shows how the prevailing logic is that women are meant to stay home and men are meant to go out and work. Further, sex selection is actually a practice that is commonly occurring in Southeast Asia, India, and Pakistan. So in these countries, when it's found out that a woman is pregnant with a girl, they're actually forced and pressured by members of society and by their family members to have an abortion if they're pregnant with a girl. And in some extreme cases, infanticide still occurs, which is the killing of a baby when they find out that it's a girl. And this is all based on the prevailing belief that if you sacrifice a girl in one pregnancy, you are guaranteed to have a boy in the next one. So with these kind of practices of gender discrimination in mind, I want you to consider the following scenarios. A little girl in a rural village in India who wants to break the cycle and earn her education, but is discouraged by members of her family because of her duties to her household. A woman in China who finds out that her male counterparts make immensely more money than her in a nation with one of the world's largest gender pay gaps. A teenage girl in South Korea who has the dream of becoming a CEO one day, but can't because she is required to stay home and manage the household. So at this intersection of patriarchy and culture lays the gap that my research is trying to address. In many developing Asian countries, women are restricted due to severe cultural standards from working their way up in positions in the workplace. However, at the same time, it has been proven that when women have these high-ranking positions in companies, they're more likely to be successful. So my research is focusing on if there is a connection between this culture and this fact that women cannot make their way into these higher positions. And this is actually something that carries outside of these women's home continents because in many companies outside of Asia, Asian women still face discrimination in comparison to their other female counterparts of other races. So I think it's really important to bring light to this issue that Asian women face on a daily basis. So the research method that I chose to employ was a survey, and I did this through Google Forms, and I collected both qualitative and quantitative data on the specific experiences of Asian women and the pressures that they have felt by their culture and how it affected the trajectory of their careers. And the image on the screen is kind of the first thing that pops up when somebody opened my survey. It's just a brief description of what the AP Capstone program is, what my research focused on, and why they should participate in my survey. I used a variety of different types of questions. I used Likert scale questions, which asked how strongly people felt about a certain statement or question. I had open response questions because I did want to gain specific information on personal experiences, and this provided participants a way to share their personal anecdotes with me. And then I used yes or no questions on certain broader topics just to gauge an idea of how people have felt these cultural stigmas have impacted them throughout their lives. So the participants that I included in my survey were Asian women in the workforce who I gathered through personal and mutual connections. And I didn't ask these women any questions about who their employers were or where they worked because I wanted to eliminate bias on if they would feel like they had to protect their companies or any pressure they may feel to answer dishonestly. And by collecting this information, I was able to gain insight on the cultural stigmas within the workplace. So before I start to share with you some of the results of my survey, I wanted to share with you one of the open-ended responses from a South Asian woman who participated in my survey, who holds a vice president position in her company and immigrated to the United States. And I feel like her quote kind of sets the stage for the responses that I received. She stated that there's a societal and familial expectation for the Asian female to prioritize her familial responsibilities ahead of her career goals. So now to get into my survey responses, I received about 30 responses, and of these responses, 4 Asian countries were represented, and those were India, China, the Philippines, and South Korea. And my participants were a mix of women who were born in the United States as well as outside of it, and they all came from unique educational and career backgrounds, but they all related back to some way in the business field. So I want to share with you some key responses that I got. The first one I'm going to talk about is to the question, how accurate do you feel the following statement is? Growing up, I experienced restrictions due to cultural gender standards. So this is kind of a broader question just to gauge the idea of how many of these women grew up with these cultural stigmas, and 22 out of 30 participants responded with a 3 or higher, or about 73.33%, who felt that they had experienced cultural restrictions. And actually 14 of these responses were a 4 or a 5, which is a really high and strong agreement with my statement. The next I'm going to share with you is the question, how accurate do you feel the following statement is? I have felt the need to work harder than my male counterparts to get recognition in the workplace. And 24 out of 30 participants responded with a 3 or higher, which is about 80%, which is a really high statistic. And I'm going to talk about this concept of the bamboo ceiling in the workplace. So it's very similar to the glass ceiling that women face when they feel that they have advanced to a certain point in their career and reached a barrier that no one really talks about, but that's there and they can't continue to move forward. But the bamboo ceiling is kind of related specifically to Asian women. And so I want to share with you a quote that was a response to one of my open-ended questions that I feel relates to this. And one of the participants in my survey stated, "I find myself questioning a lot if my career is sustainable, especially when my culture expects women to put more effort into starting and building a family instead. I definitely know that it is common for women in my culture to be told to marry rich or to find a partner with the ideal career, instead of being congratulated for prioritizing and growing in their own career path." So it shows how, while this question is more related to gender, it shows that for these Asian women, culture and gender are two very intertwined topics because of the expectation placed on women to just be devoted to their home and only that. The next question I'm going to share is the question, how accurate do you feel the following statement is? "I felt the need to work harder than my non-Asian counterparts to get recognition in the workplace." And 21 out of 30 participants responded with a 3 or higher, or about 70%. And again, I'm going to share with you a quote from another open-ended response that relates to this question. And one of my participants stated, "I sense the need to demonstrate my worth more extensively than my non-Asian colleagues to secure a promotion. It seems that promotions are often influenced by factors beyond performance, and there's a perception of preferential treatment for non-Asians. Moreover, I observe a disparity in pay, which adds to my concerns." So this demonstrates clear first-hand experience of Asian females feeling the effects of discrimination in their workplace. The final and, in my opinion, most eye-opening response to one of my questions was, "How strongly would you agree the following statement is? I am happy with the amount of Asian female representation in high-ranking positions in my workplace." So when participants were asked this question, I told them to keep in mind the context of their workplace as a whole, such as where it was located, the size of the company, and the overall Asian representation in their company, just to eliminate any bias in that way. And only 11 out of 30 participants responded with a 3 or higher, so only 36.67% of participants were happy with the Asian representation in their workplace in high-ranking positions, which left 19 out of 30 participants, or 63.33%, who were unhappy with the amount of Asian representation. So I'm going to discuss. So when Asian women don't see themselves represented in these high-ranking positions in their workplace, it starts to create this cycle where they feel that if they don't see somebody who has a role model who has these positions, they feel like they are less likely to reach that potential one day. So it creates this cycle that is influenced by culture and by their workplaces that really restricts them from making their way into these positions. So now I'm going to share with you some of the limitations of my research. The distribution of my survey to enough potential participants was something that I struggled with early on because I had such a specific demographic of people I was trying to reach, which Asian women who worked in the business field. It was kind of hard for me to find as many people as I could to respond because I wanted to get at least 30 responses. And then also result analysis was a limitation for me because I used so many different types of questions in my survey, and some of the open-ended responses, it's not something that you can standardize, so that was another limitation to my research. Now for my conclusions, I have found that there is a clear connection between cultural stereotypes on Asian women that carry over into the trajectory of their education and their careers. And I'm going to share with you a final quote from one of the open-ended responses that summarizes everything that I've talked about. A South Asian survey participant stated, "I would have chosen a different education path if I was not a girl. The expectation was to get a degree in pursuit of finding an eligible match for marriage." So this shows that even when women were given the opportunity to earn their degrees and follow their careers, they were only told to do it in the context of finding a male partner who would then take over that responsibility for them. Further, I have found that many Asian women are not happy with the Asian female representation in their companies. So I feel that companies need to make more of a conscious effort to create more diverse workforces in terms of both gender and race or ethnicity. And I feel that the patriarchal societies in Asia, we have to start making forward progress through organizations such as the United Nations, whose Sustainable Development Goals outline this need to create global gender equality. They need to take more of a stand towards making this forward progress in these countries.
Okay. What What were the strategies you used to conduct a review of the literature or gather information from the discipline-specific field? Why did you select those strategies, and what strategies did you consider and reject?
So one of the strategies that I used was when I was looking for scholarly articles and previous research that had been done, I wanted to focus on like well-known world organizations such as the United Nations, the World Health Organization. So the first thing that I did was go to these organizations and their websites and see if they had previous studies that were done and any research or articles that they published before I tried to go to other sources, because many of the outside sources that I found were blog-based and they're not as credible. So that's why I decided to go to the bigger organization first and narrow from there. And one of the strategies that I tried first and decided to not go with was using databases like on the school website, but I found that a lot of the sources that they would show me when I searched my question were very outdated, so I chose to use this path instead.
Thank you. Which of the various perspectives you explored was the most difficult for you to incorporate into your research inquiry, and why?
So the most difficult perspective for me to incorporate in my research was that of companies, because they're not exactly going to be willing to share how they are discriminating against a certain group of people. So I kind of had to rely more on the first-hand experience of my participants rather than information directly from companies to see how they dealt with diversity, equity, inclusion processes within their own internal affairs.
Think about the initial curiosity that led to your inquiry. What other areas of inquiry might the same curiosity lead to?
So another area of inquiry that I would probably try to pursue if I had more time would be to research how these stereotypes and standards that carry over to their careers also affect these women's mental health. I think that's a really big factor here, and I know that there's definitely a lot of research that can be done. So that's something that I think my research could have led to if I had more time.
Okay. Any other questions from you? All right.
I do have one more question. You had mentioned that the databases accurately are older. In order to get things in there, it takes a long time, so they're out of date. Did you find that the databases were helpful for your background literature search, like getting your basic information?
Yeah, basic information. Some statistics were I found through the databases,
Right.
but like articles with longer research studies, they were done a long time ago, and I
Right.
didn't want to use like
Right.
outdated.
So it has some worth, but it's not as up to date as we would like.